If you think HOA drama ends at trash cans and mailbox paint, wait until you hear how a clipboard queen marshaled a midnight compliance patrol to storm my rural acreage, only to stumble straight into an active police sting targeting a theft ring that had been bleeding our county dry for months. Before we unravel how a petty vendetta collided with a felony investigation, buckle up, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the wildest HOA and neighborhood property showdowns on the internet. Because this one goes from nosy to notorious, faster than a golf cart with no governor. It started with small noises that most people ignore. The clink of a gate chain at odd hours, the scuff of tires against gravel that never crunch in the same pattern twice, and the way shadowy figures learn the shape of your fence line by heart. I own 20 acres on the edge of the Maple Crest development, a stitched-together patch of pasture and outbuildings just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, which made it a strange attraction for anyone who either loved the sound of roosters or despised the thought of imperfection. I knew which camp our HOA board president fell into. She wore rules like a uniform and outrage like perfume, and when her reign over Maple Crest's hedges and deck stains hit a lull, she discovered me, the not-a-member who ruined her view with tractors and hay bales. The story would be predictable if it ended with letters and fines, but there were two problems with her plan. First, the HOA had no authority over my land. I wasn't on their roster, not even a stray comma. Second, and less obvious, my property had quietly become a staging ground for local law enforcement, who suspected that a crew had been stealing farm equipment, catalytic converters from rural trucks, and even livestock. The officers needed a place with camera angles and gates that could be left ajar without setting off the gossip network. They picked my place because it sat beside a development where everyone watched everyone else, which is either security or theater depending on your mood. The officers had asked for discretion. I promised it. So I wore a rhythm of normalcy: feed at dawn, fix fence wire at noon, tinker in the shed at dusk. The bait was subtle: an old but polished trailer parked temptingly near the frontage road, a few crates stacked just inside the fence, markings that meant nothing to neighbors but everything to anyone scouting fast grab-and-go targets. The nights began to sprout clues: shoe prints that weren't mine, motion lights that flicked on at the wrong times, one caught whisper of an engine dying in the draw behind the cottonwoods. The officers ran plate sweeps, I swapped out a trail cam battery that went inexplicably dead, and a sergeant explained, with the tired calm of a man who had done this too long, that the ring liked to recruit their eyes from places where nosiness came cheap. He said it kindly, but we both thought it. Maple Crest was a buffet. By then, the HOA's president had built a mythology around my gates. She said my roosters violated the peaceful enjoyment of community life, that my barn lights were industrial, that my fence menaced the aesthetic of Maple Crest's entryway. She lectured strangers who jogged past my driveway. She even tried to inventory my garden beds from the sidewalk. Most of it I ignored, documenting just enough to keep a record. But when the board posted a community note about a non-compliant agricultural nuisance abutting the north perimeter, I felt the weather shift. The note wasn't a rule. It was a rallying cry. I didn't know how fast it would escalate, only that escalation never arrives with a fanfare. It arrives like a pickup rolling with its headlights off, like a breath held too long, like a text in a group chat that says, "We should do something." On a Wednesday that threw lightning from a dry sky, I got a whisper from the detective running point. The crew had probed 3 properties in 5 nights. Mine was next. We tightened the plan. 2 unmarked units would sit on the shoulder past the cattle guard. A third would post by the utility substation. I was to act normal, lock what I could lock, and leave what looked temptingly lazy. We didn't account for the HOA president's new hobby. She had christened a compliance patrol, not sanctioned by any police or even the HOA's insurance, just a few bored loyalists with reflective vests and walkie-talkies bought in a rush of righteousness. They held their first patrol meetup in the cul-de-sac nearest my fence line, exchanged lanyards like wedding rings, and promised to restore order. Someone remarked that my gate was open just enough for a stroller. Someone else called me a stubborn outlier. The president said the quiet part out loud. If the county wouldn't control me, they would. The same night, the detective circled on his map as probable. The patrol circled my property with a plan no one had stress-tested. I didn't see them at first. The trail cams did, stitching their shapes into pixels, their vests luminous smears as they peered through the hedgerow gap that opens near the old well. I heard the static of their radios, a cheap insect hum against the chorus of crickets, and I felt a knot in my stomach draw tight. I texted the detective a single word: movement. He replied with a thumb up and the word staging. Meanwhile, in Maple Crest, the patrol's text chain burned with adrenaline. They would document violations, they said, secure evidence, they said, and if necessary, intervene, which sounded heroic when written on a screen and reckless as soon as boots hit dirt. I watched them fan out where the ditch dips behind my tool shed, watched two of them unlatch the secondary gate like they had practiced it on a kitchen table, left-hand push, right-hand lift, quick shuffle through. The moment they crossed, they transformed from neighbors into trespassers, from gossip into risk. That was also the moment, though none of them knew it, that they wandered into a police perimeter built for thieves who didn't scare easily. The detective had warned me. The first steps are stone quiet, and then fate puts on boots. The boots were about to hit the ground, and I could only hope that the hands attached to them had badges. The patrol clustered near my decoy trailer, taking photos of the hitch lock like it was contraband. One peered through the slats at the crates within, whisper counting what he thought were junk car parts. He had no idea that those crates weren't junk. They were tagged and logged bait, fitted with trackers no HOA budget would recognize. The quiet broke toward something sharper, all angles and flashing possibilities. A single whisper from the hedge said it all. They're on the property. The next whisper, clipped and professional, belonged to someone with training, eyes on unknowns. In the 20 seconds that followed, every line between nosy and notorious snapped. When the lights came on, they came on for everybody. The compliance patrol froze in the glare, elbows bent around their phones, jaws clamped with the sudden understanding that they were not the watchers anymore. The unmarked units that had sat mute as fence posts came alive, doors opening, figures moving with that measured economy that separates professionals from dabblers. Command sliced the night, not barked, but carrying the weight of training and the unforgiving memory of past stings gone sideways. The detective crossed from the road shoulder as if following steps he'd rehearsed. And in 3 sentences, he did what months of letters and lectures had not. He told the patrol to set their devices down, spread their fingers and stop speaking unless spoken to. The HOA president, who wore authority like an accessory by daylight, discovered how heavy it is by night. She sputtered, pointing at my decoy trailer, insisting they were merely documenting a nuisance. The detective explained that they'd trespassed into an active operation targeting a theft crew that had cut catalytic converters from church vans and stripped tractor batteries with casual cruelty. That each crate they had photographed carried a tracker and a signature, logged by a forensic tech. That her right to supervise paint colors did not convey the right to breach a police perimeter. But shocks don't arrive single file. Around the bend by the utility substation, brakes whispered gravel and a low truck eased into view, headlights ghosted. The theft ring's scouts had picked this night for reasons we might never map. Whatever. The calculus. A second shape appeared behind the first, and the detective's voice dropped into that register reserved for moments when years of training and a handful of lives hang in a perfect, terrifying balance. He ordered his team to reposition, and the pasture became a chessboard. The HOA patrol huddled on the sideline as the first truck nosed toward the decoy trailer. The driver wore a hat pulled low. The passenger kept glancing at a phone that probably fed them the same map my trackers updated. They did not expect witnesses in reflective vests. Every trap has 1,000 ways to fail, and I counted 10 in an instant. But the team handled the variables with a composure that looked like silence. The detective waited until the hitch weight bore down, until the passenger twisted to lift the lock, until the truck squatted half an inch with the promise of stolen metal on its tongue. Then the night unfurled alarms. Movement cascaded. Commands rained down. The passenger flung his phone. The driver reached for something that was not a wallet, and a beam of light pinned hands like butterfly wings. It was fast, and then frozen, violent in potential and yet controlled by a choreography I could only barely follow. The compliance patrol learned the difference between authority and power, and between spectacle and responsibility, in under 1 minute and forever. Arrests are not tidy. The detective cuffed 2 at the truck, while a flank movement intercepted a third shape ghosting the fence line. One runner sprinted toward the ditch and met a deputy with the patience of someone who trains for only this moment. They fell into a tangle of curses and gravel, then rose separate, one under orders. The HOA president whispered that she had known. Something was off about my farm for weeks, not comprehending that the very thing she resented had just produced evidence that would tie a sequence of thefts together and return a little safety to a frayed rural map. What followed was paperwork, evidence logged, VIN numbers cross-checked, photos cataloged with timestamps. The detective folded the HOA's trespass into the record. The patrol's names were taken, their phones seized as evidence. The president claimed authority. The detective clarified jurisdiction. As dawn broke, the truth would be written in reports. The HOA patrol had blundered into a felony sting, compromising it by sheer arrogance. The next morning brought consequences. Press inquiries, insurance calls, HOA board panic. The county pressed theft charges, but for the patrol it was civil, trespass, obstruction, exposure. The president faced removal, and Maple Crest boiled in its own chat rooms. The patrol vests vanished overnight. I gave my statement under oath, factual and restrained. Lawyers followed. Depositions stretched for weeks. Insurance refused coverage, labeling the patrol unauthorized activity. The HOA imploded in slow motion. A settlement came, not rich, not ruinous, just enough to make the lesson sting. The former president resigned, issued an apology, and moved 2 streets over where nobody saluted her clipboard anymore. My fence line healed. The pasture quieted. The sting had succeeded. The thieves went to jail. The community learned that authority has borders and arrogance has a price. And peace, real peace, isn't control, it's consent. If this roller coaster from Petty Patrol to Police Sting kept you listening, do me a favor, hit subscribe, tap the bell so you catch the next wild HOA and neighbor saga, and drop a comment about the craziest overreach you've seen. Your stories fuel these deep dives, and I'll see you in the next one.